So today we're diving into the story of one man who, and I mean this literally, built the golden age of an entire empire. He wasn't a sultan, he wasn't a general, but his legacy, well, it's written in stone across the skyline. We are, of course, talking about Mimar Sinan, the legendary chief architect of the Ottoman Empire.
But before we get into the man himself, let's talk about the problem he was obsessed with his whole life. It's a question architects have been asking forever. How do you create the perfect space? I mean, what does that even look like?
Well, for the Ottoman Empire, at the absolute height of its power, the answer was pretty clear. The ultimate flex, architecturally speaking, was this: a massive, wide-open interior space with absolutely nothing in the way, all capped by one single, gigantic dome. Basically, a man-made heaven on earth. The only problem? How in the world do you actually build something like that?
So, to solve this incredible architectural puzzle, the empire didn't go for some stuffy, classically trained scholar. Nope, they turned to a soldier. And believe me, his path to becoming a genius architect is anything but conventional. Let's get into it.
So, who was Sinan? Well, he was born a Christian in Anatolia, way back around 1490. As a young man, he was recruited into the elite Janissary Corps through what was called the Devshirme system. And for the next 20-plus years, his life wasn't about drawing up blueprints. It was all about battles. He was a military engineer out on campaigns everywhere from the heart of Europe to the deserts of Persia.
And this is what gave Sinan his superpower. See, a typical architect back then, they were all about theory, books, and plans. But Sinan, he learned on the job in the most practical way possible. He was out there building bridges, siege towers, fortresses, and get this, he learned about a building's weak points by figuring out the best way to destroy it. You just can't get that kind of hands-on, real-world engineering intuition from a textbook.
So, after all that time on the battlefield, at around 50 years old, 50, his genius gets noticed by the main man himself, Sultan Süleyman the Magnificent. He gets appointed chief imperial architect. And right there, that's when Sinan's real mission begins. His lifelong quest for the perfect dome.
He was completely obsessed with creating an interior that felt, well, almost weightless. Imagine a huge open room where this massive dome just seems to float above you, with light pouring in from everywhere. And this wasn't just about making something pretty. It was a massive puzzle of structure and geometry that he had to solve.
What's really cool is that Sinan himself kind of laid out his career for us. He saw it as this clear progression. 3 distinct stages: apprentice, journeyman, and finally, master. And each one of these stages is marked by a single incredible mosque.
Okay, let's start at the beginning. Level 1, the apprentice phase. This brings us to the Şehzade Mosque, and the backstory here is pretty powerful. Sultan Süleyman commissioned it as a memorial for his favorite son who had died tragically young.
Now, even as an apprentice, Sinan was already a total game changer. He just threw out the old rule book. Instead, he created this perfectly symmetrical building, a huge central dome supported by 4 identical half-domes around it. It's like this beautiful geometric flower opening up to the sky. I mean, for a first go, this was a radical experiment, and pretty much everyone agrees it was his first real masterpiece.
All right, so that was the apprentice. What happens when he levels up to journeyman? Well, for this next stage, Sultan Süleyman gives him the ultimate commission. Build a mosque in my name, a monument to the absolute peak of Ottoman power. And what we get is the breathtaking Selimiye Mosque.
So what did he do here? He took the ideas he tested at the Şehzade and he refined them, made them even better. Instead of 4 semidomes, he simplifies it down to 2. This creates this incredible, long, rectangular space that just pulls you forward and up. It gives you this overwhelming feeling of a single, unified interior. It was the perfect symbol for the Sultan's absolute authority. And, it's the building that still dominates the Istanbul skyline to this day.
But even the magnificent Süleymaniye wasn't the final answer for Sinan. He knew he could do better. And get this, he's over 80 years old when he starts his final, great work, the one he himself called his masterpiece, the Selimiye Mosque in the city of Edirne.
And this is it. This is where he finally completely cracks the code. The genius move is how he supports that gigantic dome. He uses 8 massive pillars, what they call elephant feet, arranged in an octagon. And by doing that, he pushes all the heavy support structures to the very edges of the room. The inside just opens up completely. It's the ultimate achievement of what he was chasing his entire life, this huge, light-filled space where the dome feels like it's just floating on air.
You know, throughout his entire career, there was this one massive goal driving him, this one ghost he was chasing, and that was the legendary dome of the Hagia Sophia, built by the Byzantine emperors centuries earlier. The common belief was, nobody can build a bigger dome than that. It's impossible. And for Sinan, that was basically a dare.
So, did he do it? Oh yeah. The dome of the Selimiye Mosque comes in at 31.28 meters in diameter. Nearly 1,000 years after the Hagia Sophia was built, Sinan, in his 80s, finally and definitively surpassed it. Mission accomplished.
But you know, Sinan's genius wasn't just about building the biggest and the best. It wasn't just about size. It was about creating architecture that actually served people. He was as much a master of social engineering as he was of structural engineering.
See, his great mosques were never just mosques. They were always the heart of something much bigger, a complex called a kuliye. Think of it like a self-contained community hub. You'd have schools, hospitals, public kitchens for the poor, even inns for travelers, all built right there around the mosque.
So his buildings weren't just monuments to look at from afar. They were living, breathing parts of the city. He perfectly blended this incredible spiritual grandeur with real, practical social functions. He created these vibrant ecosystems for the community.
So, when you step back and look at his whole career, what's the final tally? He was the chief architect for almost 50 years, and the sheer amount of work he produced is, well, it's just staggering. It's almost hard to wrap your head around.
Over his career, Mimar Sinan was responsible for the design and construction of more than 300 major buildings across the entire Ottoman Empire. 300.
And just look at the variety here. We've been focusing on the grand mosques, right? But he built everything. We're talking schools, public baths, palaces, and also the really critical, unglamorous stuff like bridges and aqueducts. He wasn't just building monuments. He was building the very framework of the empire.
I mean, there's just no debate. He is the greatest architect of the Ottoman classical period, hands down. And if you're looking for a contemporary in the West to compare him to, it's gotta be Michelangelo. You have these two giants working at the same time who both completely defined an entire era of art and architecture. And their legacy, it's still standing centuries later.
And that really brings us to a final question, doesn't it? We can see Sinan's legacy in the stone and tile of these incredible buildings. But maybe the real legacy, the thing that truly lasts, isn't the stone at all. Maybe it's the idea behind it all, that lifelong, obsessive, and in the end, totally triumphant quest for perfection.